Check this out.
Oh!
That's another 40.04.
432.17 ounces.
Rick Ness is about to take the biggest risk of his entire career. He's heading back into a mine that everyone else already abandoned, a place filled with collapsed tunnels, rusted machines, and unstable ground that could give way at any moment. For years, miners called it finished, a dead site with nothing left to offer. But Rick doesn't see it that way, because the moment his team started drilling, something unbelievable showed up. Deep underground, between 90 and 110 feet, they hit a gold layer so rich it shocked even experienced geologists. Some samples showed 2.8 to 3.5 ounces of gold per cubic yard, numbers far beyond normal mining averages. Then came the real bombshell. Estimates suggested there could be up to 105,000 ounces of gold buried below. At current prices, that puts the value close to $200 million. And just like that, everything changed. This wasn't just an abandoned mine anymore. This was a high-risk, high-reward operation, where Rick is burning up to $60,000 every single day, running massive machines nonstop, and pushing deeper into ground that could collapse or flood without warning. Because if this works, it won't just be a win. It could be the biggest comeback in gold mining history. But if it fails, Rick could lose everything. If you want to find out whether this bold gamble leads to a massive fortune or total disaster, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next could become one of the biggest twists in gold mining history. Out in the freezing hills of the Klondike sits a mine most people have already erased from memory. Today, it's nothing more than splintered wooden supports, rusted pipelines, and collapsed passageways. Around 15 to 20 years ago, operations here were completely shut down. Back then, crews claimed the gold was nearly gone, and continuing would only drain money. Reports from that time showed recovery rates had dropped to just 0.4 ounces per cubic yard, far too low to stay profitable. One by one, miners walked away and moved on to better ground. But Rick took a different approach. He went back to the beginning, studying old geological maps, drilling records, and ancient river data. And one detail kept showing up. This land once sat above a long-lost river system. That changed everything. Ancient river channels are known for trapping heavy metals, especially gold. Rick began to suspect that earlier miners had only scratched the surface, leaving the real treasure hidden much deeper underground. He told his crew straight, if this theory is right, this isn't just an abandoned site. It's an undiscovered gold system. To test that idea, they launched a major drilling program, setting aside nearly $500,000 just for exploration. Drill rigs were brought in, and multiple test points were selected across the site. Bit by bit, the drills pushed deeper, 70 feet, 85 feet, 100 feet. Every core sample was carefully collected, labeled, and sent off for analysis. At first, nothing unusual showed up. But once they hit depths between 80 and 110 feet, everything changed. The lab results stunned even the geologists. Several samples revealed gold concentrations between 2.5 and 3 ounces per cubic yard. To put that into perspective, most Klondike placer mines average just 0.3 to 0.6 ounces. That means this ground could be 5 to 7 times richer than normal. At first, Rick's team thought they might have hit a small, high-grade pocket. But as more drilling data came in, a pattern started forming. Out of 12 test holes, 8 showed consistently high gold values. This wasn't just a lucky spot. It pointed to something much bigger, a long, buried channel where gold had been accumulating for millions of years. Based on early data, geologists made a rough projection. If this gold layer stretches between 1,200 and 1,500 feet, with an average of 1.8 ounces per cubic yard, the total gold underground could range from 90,000 to 105,000 ounces. At current prices, that's potentially $180 million to $210 million. When Rick heard those figures, the entire camp went quiet. A site that had been written off for years might actually hold one of the biggest hidden deposits in recent memory. But there's a catch. Reaching gold at that depth isn't simple. It means deeper excavation, powerful dewatering systems, reinforced structures, and heavy machinery running constantly. The cost? somewhere between $40,000 and $60,000 every single day. This is the moment where everything hangs in the balance. Is this forgotten mine about to become the greatest comeback story in gold mining history? Or is it just a dangerous illusion hiding behind promising numbers? One thing is certain. If Rick moves forward with full-scale mining, he's not just risking money. He's putting his entire career on the line. As soon as the initial drilling results came in, Rick's team didn't take any chances. Independent geologists were brought in immediately. Every sample was tested again, and then tested again. Because a discovery. This big had to be absolutely certain. The core samples were sent in for advanced testing, microscopic analysis, density measurements, and detailed sediment studies. For several days, the entire camp sat in suspense, waiting for answers. And when the geologists finally returned with their full report, the numbers were so massive that, for a moment, no one said a word. According to their findings, the drilling results strongly pointed to an ancient underground pay channel. Between roughly 90 and 110 feet deep, they had identified a layer showing consistently high gold concentrations across multiple test points. If that layer continued throughout the area, early estimates suggested something huge. Between 95,000 and 105,000 ounces of gold could be buried below. Then came the reality check. With gold prices sitting near $2,000 per ounce at the time, that would place the potential value of this deposit somewhere between $190 million and $210 million. In the world of gold mining, that's not just big, it's career-defining. Many miners never come close to pulling that kind of gold in their entire lifetime. One consulting geologist broke it down for Rick, saying that if the channel truly extends the way the data suggests, then this isn't some forgotten claim. It's a massive gold system waiting to be unlocked. But alongside that, excitement came a harsh truth. Mining in an abandoned site is one of the toughest challenges out there. The ground has already been disturbed, old tunnels are unstable, and hidden water pressure can create serious risks. One wrong move, and the entire structure could give way. Rick Ness understood that reaching this gold wouldn't be simple. This wasn't a job for a small crew or a single machine. It would require a full-scale, high-powered operation. The first step was safety. Engineers surveyed the site and confirmed that the old shafts would need to be reinforced with heavy steel supports. In some areas, concrete lining would also be necessary just to keep the ground stable. That alone could cost between $1.5 and $2 million. Next came the machinery. To even begin excavation, Rick would need multiple heavy-duty excavators, a fleet of rock trucks, and high-capacity loaders. Buying or leasing all that equipment could push costs up to $2.5 to $3 million. But the biggest concern wasn't rock, it was water. Old mines often hide underground water pockets, and if those aren't controlled, flooding can happen instantly. Engineers warned that without a strong pumping system, the entire shaft could fill up the moment digging began. To handle that risk, Rick would need industrial-grade pumps, drainage systems, and backup generators, adding another $1 million to the budget. And then there's the processing side. Handling pay dirt from those depths requires a powerful wash plant, capable of processing thousands of cubic yards every day, along with conveyors, sluice systems, and upgraded recovery units. Setting all that up would cost another $1.5 to $2 million. When everything was added together, the initial investment came out to roughly $6 to $8 million. It was a massive risk. Rick knew that if the ground didn't match the drilling results, that entire investment could disappear. But if the geologists were right, this wouldn't just be another mining job. It could turn into a $210 million comeback story, with Rick Ness at the center of it all. The moment he gave the green light to restart operations, the pressure skyrocketed. This wasn't like opening a fresh claim. Everything about an abandoned mine is more difficult, more expensive, more dangerous, and far more unpredictable. As the machines roared to life and excavation began, the daily expenses started climbing fast. Fuel alone was a major hit. Just running the excavators and rock trucks required around 2,000 to 2,500 gallons of diesel every day. At about $5 per gallon, that meant $10,000 to $12,000 was being burned daily, just on fuel. Then came the workforce. Rick's crew included around 25 to 30 people: operators, mechanics, drivers, and wash plant workers. Skilled mining professionals don't come cheap. With wages averaging $35 to $45 per hour and long 12-hour shifts, labor costs alone were reaching $15,000 to $18,000 per day. Maintenance added another layer. With machines constantly grinding through rough terrain, parts wore out quickly: hydraulic lines, bucket teeth, conveyor belts, pump systems. Mechanics had to stay on top of everything daily, with repair costs ranging between $5,000 and $8,000. Logistics wasn't any easier. Rock trucks were moving non-stop, hauling pay dirt across the site, while secure transport had to be arranged for the recovered gold. Altogether, logistics costs stacked up to another $6,000 to $10,000 per day. When the accounting team finally added everything up, one thing became crystal clear. The operation was burning through $40,000 to $60,000 every single day. That means millions being spent constantly, just to keep things running. Rick Ness knew exactly what he was stepping into. If the gold wasn't there in the quantities the data suggested, this entire operation could collapse financially within weeks. It's a risk that has ruined many miners before him. But at this point, there was no turning back. Rick pushed the operation forward at full speed. For the first few days, though, the results were nothing special. The wash plant kept chewing through thousands of cubic yards of pay dirt, but the gold numbers still weren't hitting the level Rick had been hoping for. You could feel the tension building across camp. Everyone was thinking the same thing. Was the drilling data really right? Or had they just found a small, isolated pocket? Then everything changed. One morning, the crew prepared for a major cleanup. Days' worth of concentrate had built up, and now it was time to process it. The entire team gathered around as the sluice boxes were carefully opened and the heavy concentrate was poured onto the wash tables. As the muddy layer began to clear, something started to shine through. Bright, dense yellow metal. Within minutes, it was obvious. This wasn't a normal cleanup. Gold flakes and chunky nuggets began appearing faster and faster, leaving the crew staring in disbelief. When the final weigh-in came in, it hit everyone at once. That single cleanup produced around 280 to 320 ounces of gold. At $2,000 per ounce, that's roughly $560,000 to $640,000 in just one run. In one moment, they had covered several days' worth of operating costs. Rick stood there quietly, staring at the scale for a few seconds before saying, almost under his breath, "If this keeps going, we're not looking at a pocket. We're sitting on a full gold system." Just like that, the mood shifted. The exhaustion was gone, replaced by pure energy. For the first time, the crew started to believe this abandoned ground might actually be the beginning of something massive, possibly a deposit worth over $200 million. And if that turned out to be true, Rick Ness's gamble wouldn't just pay off, it could become one of the greatest comeback stories in the gold mining history. But as they pushed deeper, the danger grew just as fast. On the surface, everything looked under control. Underground was a different story. This mine had been shut down for nearly 2 decades, and time hadn't been kind to it. Old tunnels had weakened, wooden supports had rotted away, and in some areas, the ground had become so unstable that even minor vibrations could trigger a collapse. By now, excavation had reached depths between 95 and 110 feet. As the machines dug deeper, warning signs started to appear. Loose soil began falling from tunnel walls. Small rocks dropped without warning. Then one day, a section of the shaft, about 10 to 12 feet, suddenly gave way. Luckily, no one was inside at the time, but that moment changed everything. It was a clear reminder. This wasn't just a gold operation. It was a high-risk environment where every step could turn dangerous. Engineers didn't sugarcoat it. They warned Rick directly. If the support system wasn't upgraded immediately, the entire shaft could become unstable. And if a major collapse happened, it wouldn't just slow production. It could shut the whole operation down. Rick understood exactly what was at stake. One collapse could wipe out millions in seconds. So he acted fast. The crew installed reinforced steel supports across critical sections, added heavy timber framing to stabilize weak zones, and even poured concrete lining in the most dangerous areas. Just strengthening the tunnels added another $700,000 to $900,000 in costs. But Rick knew cutting corners here wasn't an option. At the same time, another threat was building: water. Old underground pockets had filled over the years, and any sudden breakthrough during excavation could release massive pressure. To handle that, the team installed high-capacity pumps capable of removing 3,000 to 4,000 gallons per hour. Despite all the risks, mining continued, because beneath all that danger was the reason they were here: the rich pay layer. And slowly, that risk started to pay off. Within weeks, production numbers began to climb. The wash plant started processing heavier, richer material, and every cleanup brought in more gold than the last. What started at 280 to 320 ounces per cleanup began rising fast. Soon, daily recovery levels were hitting 350 to 450 ounces. At $2,000 per ounce, that meant $700,000 to $900,000 worth of gold being pulled from the ground every single day. That's when Rick made another bold move. He took the operation 24/7, day shifts, night shifts, no downtime. Excavators kept digging non-stop. Rock trucks moved constantly, and the wash plant ran around the clock without a break. The energy in camp was completely different now. Just weeks earlier, no one knew if this place would even work. Now, the results were speaking for themselves. Gold bars were stacking up in the weigh room, and with every cleanup, the vault kept filling. One of the mechanics stood there one day, staring at the growing pile of gold, and said, "If this keeps up, we're part of something huge, maybe the biggest comeback ever." Rick didn't respond, but there was a slight smile on his face, because deep down, he knew the real question hadn't changed. Would this rich layer keep going, or suddenly disappear? If the ground stayed consistent, this could truly turn into a $210 million gold system. By now, the success had transformed the entire operation. Daily production was strong, and the gold room was filling up fast. But Rick wasn't about to get comfortable. In mining, that's the biggest mistake you can make. The real question was no longer if the gold was there, it was how far it stretched. So, Rick made a critical call. If this really was a massive gold system, then one small cut wouldn't be enough to unlock it. They needed to expand and understand the full scale of what lay beneath. In a team meeting, Rick made it clear: if we're in the right spot, this isn't just a patch, it's a full channel, and if that's true, we need to scale up now. The first step: bring in a second wash plant. Up until now, everything had been running on a single unit, capable of handling around 180 to 200 cubic yards per hour. But with excavation increasing, that simply wouldn't be enough anymore. If they wanted to keep up with what the ground was offering, they had to go bigger. Rick didn't hesitate. He went all in on expansion. He ordered a second high-capacity wash plant, designed to handle roughly 220 to 250 cubic yards per hour. But getting that machine to such a remote site wasn't simple. Massive equipment had to be hauled in from far away, and just setting it up came with a price tag of around $800,000 to $1 million. Still, Rick saw it as a calculated move. If production increased the way he expected, that investment could pay for itself faster than anyone imagined. The upgrades didn't stop there. More heavy machinery rolled into camp. The fleet of rock trucks grew from about 6 to 10, dramatically improving how quickly pay dirt could be moved. With more material constantly feeding into the wash plants, the entire operation became smoother and far more efficient. But for Rick, surface success wasn't enough. He needed answers. The biggest question still remained: how far does this gold actually go? So he pushed for deeper exploration. Geologists mapped out new drilling locations across the claim, and fresh rigs were brought in to go even further down, reaching depths of 120 to 140 feet. Each new core sample carried both hope and pressure, and as the results came in, the tension only grew. Some of those deeper samples still showed strong gold values, ranging between 1.8 and 2.3 ounces per cubic yard in certain areas. That was a huge sign. It suggested the rich pay channel might still be continuing underground. If that pattern held across the site, then the earlier estimates weren't just guesses. they could be real. Geologists believe that as much as 95,000 to 105,000 ounces of gold could still be sitting below. At around $2,000 per ounce, that puts the potential value close to $200 million to $210 million. But mining has a way of humbling even the best predictions, because numbers can lie. Sometimes early drilling looks incredibly promising, only for the gold to fade as excavation moves forward. And that's the exact uncertainty Rick Ness was facing. Is this truly a massive $210 million gold system hidden beneath an abandoned mine? Or just a rich pocket that could disappear as quickly as it was found? Because if it turns out to be limited, Rick's aggressive expansion could backfire hard, turning millions in investment into a massive loss. But if the ground stays consistent, then this isn't just a good run. This could become one of the boldest and most dangerous comeback stories ever seen in gold mining, a forgotten mine that fooled everyone for years, now revealing a hidden fortune worth hundreds of millions.